Hello everyone, DonTheCrown here, and in today's video I'm going to give you 10 tips whether you're a Path of Exile 1 veteran or brand new to the series that is going to help you with the end game of Path of Exile, which is mapping. Now once you finish the end of the campaign at the end of Act 3 Cruel or Act 6, you're going to end up in the Ziggurat Refuge here, which is a town that has all of the stuff that you're going to need from different benches if you did this in Act 1, the quest for the blacksmith, or all of the other stuff. But ideally, we're going to want to get out of town as soon as possible, because although there is a map device, we want to get into our own private hideout, so we don't have to deal with seeing other people running around, all of their cosmetics and stuff. And just a real quick tip for this, how you find those is you want to look for this symbol on maps, or nodes, I guess, on your overall world map. And this basically is going to be a node that you can go and throw a waystone in, and once you completely clear it, you'll be able to go up to the alva over here, and you're going to do select hideout, and that'll give you options to pick whichever hideout that you want. I have all of them unlocked. And then we can go and click this button here for the go to our hideout. Now note, if you don't have a hideout yet and you're having a hard time getting back to the Ziggurat Refuge, it is this waypoint down here in the bottom middle at the end of Cruel Act 3. There is another waypoint that is right on top of it, which can make it kind of difficult. But we're going to go to our hideout here now. And this is just overall better because you don't have to worry about loading other people and all that kind of stuff, or the noises their pets may make. Now, the second tip here is Dorani actually does sell you Waystones if you're kind of in trouble. Now, while he does have infinite amount of tier 1s, if you buy out the lower ones, they do, or the higher level ones, they do go away. But if you want to, you can also go to the reforging bench and 3 to 1, so tier 1, tier 1, tier 1, and they will turn into a tier 2. And so this is a way just to get like higher tier waystones. If you are absolutely completely out of waystones, we're going to try to give you some tips that you're not going to have to use this, besides maybe turning some lower level waystones that you don't need into better ones. So waystones in general, let's talk about them real quick. Basically, this is like a key that opens up a zone for you. And the key is kind of just like a blank slate, and you can tell what it's going to open just by looking at the map. This is going to open a deserted map. It is a map type, or for example, if I went over here, this would be a savanna, and whatever is on my waystone and whatever is on the node here is going to determine what's in the zone. But for waystones in general, they basically can have different levels of rarity. So they can be blue, they can be yellow, and that just determines how many mods you have on them. Now, suffixes for waystones give you increased scariness, I guess you could say, increased difficulty and waystone drop chance. So we see here that this gives us critical hit chance and damage to monsters, but more waystone drop chance. And then prefixes give us positive things like increased rarity, and we can regal these up, we can even alch to make these better. And then at higher level, you can even consider using a vol orb to randomly either make it nothing happens, go down a tier, go up a tier, or change. So it's all prefixes and all suffixes. Some of these all prefixes, all suffixes maps get pretty freaking wild. Like this one here with 705% waystone drop chance. This is all suffixes. And this map is incredibly deadly. And the going up and down a tier actually lets you go all the way up to tier 16 as well. Maps or waystones are going to drop from tier 1 through 15 while you're going through the current game. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about here is what happens when you actually click the map device. So normally you're going to see a zone that looks kind of like this. We're going to see the Ziggurat Refuge and some other stuff. And there's a lot of these nodes all over the place that are a little bit confusing. But if you click the I button up here, it's going to give you a lot of information. I'd recommend reading through some of this stuff. There is some misinformation, like for example, that maps no longer give you additional damage or elemental resistance reduction as you go up. And so right now it's just going to be a flat -60 res reduction from whatever you have when you're sitting in Act 1 town. So you can keep that in mind. But this will kind of give you an idea of what all of these nodes mean when you see them. The important ones that I want to point out are these 3 markers on maps. So this means that there is a map boss in that area. And then these two both mean that there's +1 monster level. So if I put a tier 2 Waystone in here, it's going to be 68. And then if I put it in over here, it's 66. And so these two are very, very powerful, corrupted and irradiated, because these make it so that you're kind of getting more bang for your buck from your Waystones. It makes it so that you're going to be a lot easier to get levels for the like Waystone progression. Now this will still count as if you're doing a tier 2 Waystone. So if you're doing the tier 2 Waystone quest, you can't like put in a tier 2 and it counts as a tier 3. It's just going to drop higher level stuff, including Waystones. And so especially when you're trying to like early on progress, taking corrupted or irradiated maps is very, very powerful. Now our next tip here, I haven't really numbered them, but I guess this would be tip number 6, is let's talk about towers. So lost towers are all over the freaking place. They're like one of the most common things that you're going to find, just literally everywhere, all across the map. And what these are always the exact same. They're always this like very small map that has like a whole bunch of little rooms in them. They're like this like tower layout. And once you complete it is very different than other nodes. So most nodes only counts as completed and allows you to progress further in the atlas if you kill all of the rare monsters, or all of the rare monsters and the boss, if there is a boss. But towers just require you to run through them and click a thing at the end and you'll be done. And generally these are not a good map to put like your best maps in, because you're very, very rarely going to get a map return from them, which is kind of a big problem in the early game. Now, personally, what I recommend is as you're going up through the lower tiers, putting a low tier map in your towers is perfectly fine. But once we get to the end game, we're looking for Citadels, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I'd recommend using at least tier 14 maps. But these towers basically do two things. They reveal a huge area around themselves, and they will also give you the ability to add modifiers to all maps in range, and give you the ability to add content to those maps as well. And so we can potentially add different league mechanics or irradiated, which gives us more monster level. So for example, in this area, you might notice that that purple hand node is literally everywhere. Like almost every single node here that is available to run has the breach mod on it, which is intentional because I've been putting these breach precursor tablets in each tower. And so these apply, they put a certain amount of maps in range, become either irradiated or breach or delirium or ritual, whatever you're putting in there. But also these tablets can also have their own rarity, and they can go up to blue here. And so we can add a prefixing suffix, which just means that there's just more kind of juice on all of your maps. For the most part, these are something you almost always want to do. They're just going to give you like more rewards. And the difficulty factor of these is mostly like adding more monsters. So it's a pretty obvious thing to do to me. And these all overlap, which means that when you're doing towers, what I recommend doing is like I worked my way up this direction and I like got to this tower here. I then went and did this tower, and I could consider even going all the way over to this tower before I clear out the maps in the middle. And this is because these maps start to get overlapping benefits. So you see there's lots of different nodes on here, and it does appear that like nodes are going to have their own benefits irregardless. But like if we look at this one all the way out here, it's not as thick from having as many towers touch it. And same thing, like this one over here barely has anything compared to like these nodes in the middle here that have, you know, quite a lot of benefit of like 41% increased number of rare monsters, because this one's probably getting hit by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different towers right now. And so you kind of want to progress to towers and then put them in, and then you want to go and, you know, kind of backtrack and kind of give you a visual here of what the radius looks like. This is kind of like what it would look like in terms of influence. And so you kind of want to like fill in all of your towers before you fill in that stuff. And that's like something that's really helped me a lot with getting a lot of better map returns. Now, talking about the different seasonal mechanics, there's basically four of them right now: Breach, Delirium, Expedition, and Ritual. And these are just like different mechanics. I guess they're no longer seasonal. They're PoE1 seasonal, and now they are permanent in PoE2. But I would rate these probably as Breach and Delirium are good. Ritual is also okay, but then Expedition, I think right now is very bad. The reward for these is basically giving you the ability to use these guys as crafting services, and it doesn't actually seem to be as good to me as it was in PoE1, and also just takes a bunch of time. It's kind of a pain in the butt. I don't really even know if there's like a chase item out of that right now, and so I personally kind of been skipping Expedition, just haven't really been enjoying it. And also it kind of feels like right now, they did just nerf this, it kind of feels like the Expedition monsters are a little bit overtuned, like where I will be basically super duper fine even in scary maps, and then I will just get one shot by Expedition mobs. And so I just kind of just don't even bother doing it anymore. I don't think it's worth it. Ritual can give you a lot of rewards. There's a lot of like different omens, or even the boss summoning material for Ritual is worth an insane amount of money right now. And you can just go to the currency tab here and kind of see what I'm talking about. So like these Expedition things here, if we go and pull these up, it's about 5 of these artifacts to 1 exalt. Whereas if we going in here to Ritual, or we go in here to like Breach, for example, and like a Breach Stone, which is 300 Breach Splinters, is about 58 exalts. We go to Delirium, some of these very, very deep distilled emotions are extremely expensive. Expedition, for the most part, not really going to be super duper valuable to you. Here we are, omens, for example. Some of these omens are absolutely insanely expensive. Like there's not even stock in exalts, and we have to go and look in divine orbs. And so, for example, the omen of sinistral erasure is 10 divines currently, which is absolutely insane. And I just think that that's like makes it just generally better. Now, lastly, let's talk about kind of the end game bosses. So on top of that, these different league mechanics have end game bosses. So Delirium has Simulacrum, the Breach has Breach Stones, Expeditions have Logbooks, and then for, I don't know where this one is, Fragments, the Audience with the King comes from the Ritual mechanic. And you can see this is 6 divine for a key right now, which is insane just to summon a boss. But once you actually have one of these, you are going to want to put them in the home area. There's this little thing here called the Realm Gate. This allows you to open the door to these particular bosses, and they are just one and done. So if you die in the Breachstone, it's gone. If you die in the Audience of the King, it's gone, which is relatively scary. But these do give you Atlas passives for their mechanic, which we'll talk about very, very shortly. The last thing I want to talk about is Citadels. I know that there's this quest that I've been working on for like almost a week, it feels like at this point, where we are trying to unlock this zone here, the Burning Monolith, and that requires you to find Citadels. And what I've found personally is that when you are trying to find Citadels, which are the end game mechanic, you pretty much want to put tier 14 or higher maps into your towers. And I think that this works because it reveals content based on the tier of map that you're running, or maybe running on average. And by putting in low tier maps, you're kind of like screwing yourself over there. And so I went all the way down here before I found my first Citadel, all the way down here. And I'm pretty sure on this tower here, I accidentally put a tier 15 map, and it revealed my first Citadel, the Iron Citadel. This is the Act 1 boss. And then we started putting in like tier 14 maps, and we right away found another Citadel just super duper quickly. And then I continued to do tier 14 maps again, found another Citadel, and then I believe there's one more around here somewhere. It's right over here, another tier 14, tier 15 Citadel. And so we found mostly copper and iron Citadels. I have not found the bronze one yet at all. As you can see here, finding Citadels is definitely possible. And I've actually got a little bit frustrated and decided to go and clear a different direction to see if this has any help. So I've been going down and to the right. So going up and to the left now to see if that helps. But this appeared just to be random. And I don't really feel like there's anything that you can really do besides running high tier maps consistently and maybe just like beelining out in a direction and doing towers to reveal more and more content. Obviously, I've been stopping to clear a ton of maps here with breaches as we like get a lot of overlapping towers. You know, moving this tower down, this one down here would be kind of good because there's like several towers that are hitting it. But yeah, lastly, let's talk about Atlas passives. This is my current tree that I've been testing out. It's been working out pretty well for me. I'd recommend going and picking up the nodes here for increased Waystone tier. I think this is pretty nice. Also getting yourself increased quantity of Waystones is pretty good as well. And then I think things like the Remnants of Power up here and Enigmatic Intensification, both of these just help you when you're farming those zones that are between all of the towers. It just kind of like doubles up with what seems to already be pretty good, where it's just like go and get all of the towers around an area and just go and clean out everything in between and then go to the next area and do that all over again. Local knowledge also seems pretty good as well. I don't really know how to determine what a biome is. And then lastly, this section down here really makes maps a lot more difficult or kind of avoid unless you were like actually stomping. But this gives you more rare monsters, makes it so that you'll find a twin pair of rares where they'll both have the same mods. And this can lead to some very scary moments. And then lastly, this node down here, Deadly Evolution, I thought was trash at first, but this basically gives you more loot per rare monster and per boss. But note that this does work on Citadel bosses, and I would highly recommend you remove this before you go into a Citadel, because some of the rare modifiers that they can get are incredibly not tuned at all for being on a Citadel boss. Like I got the Flame Trail on the Act 1 boss, and it just burned through me in moments. It was like fighting somebody who has Righteous Fire. I felt like I was just nothing I could do at all. And so it was just pretty unfun to do. So I'd highly recommend you to remove this unless you're playing some sort of build that can just like basically one-shot the Citadel bosses. You also get, as you go through and do bosses, this boss tree here. I've just been going the left side. Each one of these little travel nodes increases the difficulty of bosses. I have not been able to get above 6 out of 10 yet for some reason, even though I've killed bosses that are above level 79 plus. Maybe it's just incredibly rare. Maybe it's bugged. Maybe I have to complete the Pinnacle of Flame quest. Not really sure. We'll have to see how that goes. I haven't obviously done the final boss yet, and I haven't really done any of the boss summons for any of the other mechanics except for Breach. Breach is actually pretty difficult. I would say that this is more difficult than the final Trial of the Sukma, and the boss hits really very hard. But this is the tree that I found to be the most effective. Just adding more hands, more monsters, adding more breach splinters, which is really nice, adding more monsters, and then giving you the chance to have up to 11 breaches in a map, I think is pretty insane. We might adjust this as we go, but yeah, this is basically what I think for passives. And yeah, that's pretty much a quick-ish rundown on endgame mapping stuff. Hopefully this video helped you out and picked up some tips and tricks, and we'll see you guys again soon.